Hi, welcome back. We just finished talking about sections, or that was the previous video that you watched. And the whole point of using sections was to create a well-structured document. Well, you can also use headers and footers to create a well-structured document that makes it easy for folks to read. Now, when you have headers or footers, headers are information that appear at the top of each page. Footers are information that appear at the bottom of each page. So, for example, headers are in the margin. So if I double-click at the top of my page, I'm in the header. And in a header, I can do a variety of things. I could create the name of my document. I can give my name and do a variety of other things. If I want to go to the footer, now the minute I'm in the header, I actually have the opportunity to go into the footer as well. I could go to footer since the header footer contextual tab displayed. And now I'm in the footer, and usually in the footer I might choose to insert a page number. Now when you do a page number, you have the opportunity to do top of page, which would be in your header, bottom of page, which would be in your footer, and then you could do it within the page margins, and you have the opportunity to decide where that is. I'm usually a huge fan of current position, so I like to position my cursor where I want the page number, and then I get to pick one of these pre-designed page numbers. And when I'm done, I can either double-click to get out of the header or footer, or simply close header or footer. Now I'm minimizing my page a little bit so that you could see my header and footer. And if I add content to this page, you'll notice that the content in the header and or footer is slightly grayer than the content that's on my page. Now they won't print like that. When I go to print this document, my header and footer, unless I change the color, will be just as dark as the content on my page. The text and font color is the content on my page. But it's lighter so you can tell it's in the header and or footer. Now when I add a page, press Control Enter, I have the same header and the same footer, and notice the page number is page 2. Control Enter again to add a third page, and you can see that in fact, I'm going to scroll down a little bit so you can see that, I have a third page. So by default, I have a header on each page and a footer on each page. But I can change that. If this in fact were my title page, or if I wanted to create a new page, and I wanted this to be a title page, and then I wanted this to be page 1, and then page 2, and so on and so forth, I can go into my header or footer, and I have the ability to define a different first page. That means I have a first page header, a first page footer, and then I have a header and a footer. Now I'm going to close my header footer just so you can see what that means. Because I didn't put anything in my first page header or footer, the first page is blank. My second and third and fourth pages now, because I added another page, all have the same header and footer. So that was a different first page. So when I go back into my header or footer, I might not want something in my header. I may want something in the footer. And then I can always add that if I choose to. Now I also have another option. I have different odd, even pages. Now please keep in mind when I do this, I now have 3 separate headers and 3 separate footers in this document. I have a first page header footer. I have an even page header footer. And then I'm going to choose, I'll go into my even page header footer. I'm going to choose next, which brings you to my odd page header footer. And then you see I have yet another even page header footer. Now, because my original header started on the first page, and then I made that a new, like a first page header footer, my odd page header footer has the actual content in it. Now I could do something here if I were writing a book. Sometimes you want the even pages of the book to have the chapter name, and then you want the odd pages of the book to have the title of the book, or something like that. So in this case, I'm going to actually close my header footer, go back to the top of my document. I'm going to stick with no header footer on the first page. On the second page, I'm going to put just my name in the header. In the footer, now I can actually see it, but if I couldn't, remember that I can always go to footer. In the footer, I want the page number that I have on all my even pages. So I'm going to click page number, current position. I'll just choose the page there. Now I'm going to go to the next footer. Now I actually want continuing of page numbers, so it did that. Page 3, and then I have this as page 4. So because I have odd footers, I'd have to redo page numbering in the odd footers and do page numbering in the even footers, but they are continuing one after the other. Because my odd page header already had the name of documents and my name, and the even page header has my name, when I close this, go to the bottom of my document and add a new page, which is page number 5, you can see clearly that it's an odd page header and footer. And then when I do a Control Enter and add a page 6, that is an even page header footer. So my 3 headers and footers are first page header footer, which I chose to leave blank, even header footer, and then odd header footer. Now, you can imagine the complexity when you start to add sections. So remember in the last video that you watched, we talked about sections. Well, keep in mind that every document can have up to 3 different types of headers and 3 different types of footers. Now, there's a little more complexity when it comes to sections. So let me go to a document with sections. I don't think this is it, so let me just find it quickly for you. Well, actually, I'll create it. I'm going to do a new document. So that document with sections. So I have this document, and I'm going to press Enter a few times. I'm going to go to Layout, Breaks, and do a Next Page. Press Enter a few times. Breaks, Next Page, Section Break. So each of these are sections. You can tell I have 3 sections. When you think of a regular document having up to, a regular document meaning a document without sections, when you think of a regular document having up to 3 headers and footers, first page, even, odd, then I'm going to add a few pages in section 1. I'm going to go to section 2, and I'm just paying attention to where I am this way. I'm going to add a few pages here. And then I'm going to go to section 3, which I know is on my last page, and add a few pages here. I'm just pressing Control Enter to add pages. So now I'm in section 1. And in section 1, I'm going to double click on my header, and you can see that it says Header Section 1 and Footer Section 1. That's as though I just created a regular header or footer. Keep in mind, every section has its own header and its own footer. So as I scroll through my document, you can see Header Section 2 and Header Section 3. If I add the complexity of a different first page, Section 1 has a first page header, a first page footer, a Header 1 Section 1, and a Footer Section 1. Section 2 only has my header footer, and Section 3 only has my header footer. If I go up to the beginning again and add different odd even, now my header section 1 has first page header footer, even page header and footer, and odd page header and footer. Now, in that case, section 2 also has even headers and footers, and I can click on Go Next so you can see them, as well as section 3. So the different first page was specific to the section I was in, but the even odd took place in all the sections. So that can be an interesting option. So it gets a little more complicated. So let's just take this off and we'll try to keep it a little less complicated right now. I have a header 1 section, a footer 1 section, and then I have my, I'll go next, my header 2 section, and then my header 3 section. Technically, I only have 3 headers in this document, 1 for each section. When I go to header 1, if I were to just type my name, if I choose next, actually you can see it here, section 2 has my name and section 3 has my name. Now why is that? They're different sections. We saw that they were different sections. The reason that is because when you have sections, the default is that each section can certainly have its own headers and footers, up to 3, right? Its own first page header, footer, its own even odd header, footers, and then standard header, footers if you wanted those. But when you have different sections, the default of those sections is to use something called same as previous. Now, I'll tell you where this is handy. I might not want that for the headers. I might want the headers. I'm going to click in header section 2, turn off the link to previous, and then I can type anything I want. I'm just going to write the word section 2 so we can see that it's section 2. And if I go next, since 3 is actually linked to section 2, I'm going to turn off link to previous, and I'm going to change that to a 3. And I'll change the text a little bit. I'll call it another main heading. Now, I can have different headings for each of the footers, or each of the headers. So my name in the first header, another heading, section 2 in the second header, and then for the third section, another main heading, section 3. All different headers. The reason that link to previous is really neat, though, if I go into the footer, and in the footer, I want a page number. Page number, current position, I'm going to keep picking the same one. I'll pick accent bar 2. Notice that because the footer in section 2 is same as previous, it page numbered appropriately. And I go to next. I can see that in section 3. So this is the reason you might want same as previous. If you have even odd headers and footers, you might want same as previous for the even and same as previous for the odd, because if you had a book, the even pages could be the name of the book. The odd pages could be the chapter name or something to that extent. So there is a bit more complexity when you're using headers and footers with multiple sections than if you have headers and footers in a document. But just do one at a time. Do your first page headers. Do your even headers. Do your odd headers, or do your first page headers. Do your general headers and your general footers, and I think you'll find yourself okay with how that works out. I'm going to close the header footer. I hope you found that helpful. Good luck.